Number 9. Joshua Fleetwood. Earlier this year, Atlanta police were sent to a local bowling alley where 31-year-old Lakevia Jackson was murdered after attending her best friend's birthday party. Jackson was leaving the bowling alley after the fun when someone shot her dead. In what can only be described as every parent's worst nightmare, her mother, Sharina Jackson, told CBS 46 that she was talking with Lakevia on the phone when her daughter was killed. Sharina said she could hear her daughter's painful cries, followed by her best friend yelling that she wasn't breathing as blood poured from her body. It soon came to light that Lakevia was allegedly murdered after a fight over a bowling ball. Atlanta Police Department Homicide Commander Lieutenant Ralph Woolfolk described the senseless tragedy as truly an atrocity. He vowed the department would work night and day to find the person responsible for the terrible crime. Authorities later charged 25-year-old Joshua Fleetwood as the prime suspect in the case. They charged him with felony murder, possession of a firearm during the commission of a felony, and possession of a firearm by a convicted felon. It's certainly not Fleetwood's first time playing with the law, but if he's responsible for Lakevia's murder, it'll hopefully be his last. Number 8. Jalal Uddin. 31-year-old mother of 3 Asma Begum's life came to an unexpected end in early 2019 when her husband, 47-year-old Jalal Uddin, stabbed her to death in their home in East London. When police arrived after getting a call from some concerned relatives, they found Asma's lifeless body in the kitchen with multiple stab wounds on her head and neck. She was pronounced dead there at the scene. Uddin turned himself into the local police station just hours later and was charged with the murder. At his trial, prosecutors revealed that Asma had told police he had been violent toward her. The court sentenced Uddin to life in prison with a minimum sentence of 19 years. Following the sentencing, Detective Inspector Brett Hagan described Asma as a dedicated mother that relied on government benefits to raise her children and was just doing her best given her circumstances. On the other hand, he described Uddin as a gambling addict who squandered what little money the family had on his own selfish habits. The day before he killed Asma, Uddin withdrew £200, $230 from her bank account and gambled it away within an hour. Asma confronted Uddin about the missing money, which was supposed to be for food and other necessities. She paid for this with her life, while her husband embarked on a stabbing spree and plunged a knife into her flesh over 50 times. Number 1. Fergus GLEN. One evening in March 2003, 36-year-old Fergus GLEN made dinner for himself and his 33-year-old brother, Craig. They ate together inside their home in New Zealand, despite being caught up in a long-running rivalry. At the time, Fergus was single and unemployed, while Craig was married and had 3 children. They were both living in their parents' house. When Craig failed to thank Fergus for cooking dinner, Glenn took an axe to his younger brother 8 times across the face and neck. But it wasn't just a crime of rage. Fergus carefully selected the axe out of several the family owned and kept in their basement, then went to the room Craig was sleeping and attacked him. He then calmly told their mother, who was awakened by the commotion, that he had killed his brother. By the time authorities arrived at the scene, nearly all the blood had drained from Craig's body. It was too late to save him. Fergus later told police he was in a good mood throughout that night, but a dark feeling overcame him after the family went to bed. He started to remember a fistfight he and Craig had gotten into months earlier and eventually decided to kill his brother. In Fergus's own words, he said Craig just annoyed him and that he wasn't proud but did what he did. He was locked up for the brutal crime but regained his freedom only 16 years later in 2019 when the parole board decided to give him another chance at civilian life. It may sound like a risky move, but Fergus was just a first-time offender when he killed Craig, and he was a model prisoner throughout his entire incarceration. He's worked closely with mental health professionals to get the help he needs, and and is now under close supervision as he readjusts to life on the outside. Hopefully, setting him free will prove to be the right decision. Number 6. Curtis Reeves. The retired police captain Curtis Reeves was in a crowded movie theater near Tampa back in 2014 when he noticed a man nearby texting on his phone during the show's previews. 43-year-old Chad Olson was sending some messages to his child's babysitter while on a date with his wife. Reeves told Olson to put his phone away, and the situation escalated. The men started arguing, and things took a deadly turn when Olson threw a container of popcorn at 71-year-old Reeves, who pulled a handgun out and shot Olson in the chest. He was rushed to a hospital, where he later died from his injuries. Olson's wife was also shot in the hand, but survived. Police charged Reeves with second-degree murder and aggravated battery. It took 8 grueling years for the case to go to trial, thanks to various delays, including pre-trial motions, hearings, and the COVID-19 pandemic. Reeves claimed he fired his weapon in self-defense and tried to invoke Florida's controversial Stand Your Ground law in court. His lawyer argued that Reeves feared for his life when Olson got violent. On the other hand, Reeves's attorney depicted his client not as a frail old man, but a well-trained career cop who responded like how he was trained. The lawyer also claimed Olson threw a cell phone at Reeves, and witnesses did actually report seeing this. A jury acquitted the elderly defendant of all charges, and he walked scot-free. For Olson's family, who were already tired from waiting so long, the verdict was a far cry from justice, while others saw it as a fair upholding of a law that lets gun carriers shoot when they feel their life is in danger. It's hard to deny that the ordeal amounted to a needless tragedy, stemming from a simple petty argument between two people who should have just let it go and watched a movie. Number 5. Franklin Paul Crowe. A landlord in Ocala, Florida, had the shock of a lifetime in February 2006 when he entered the home of his tenant, 58-year-old Kenneth Matthews, and found him bludgeoned to death. Someone had beaten him with a sledgehammer and a hammer. The attack was so brutal that the remains were unrecognizable and had to be identified using fingerprints. Kenneth's loved ones were at a loss as to who would want such a kind-hearted man dead, but his generous nature is precisely what landed him in this situation. A little over a year before the attack, Kenneth met a man named Franklin Paul Crowe at a local biker bar. The 59-year-old had apparently fallen on hard times, and Kenneth took him in as a roommate, fed him, and gave him a chance to get back on his feet. Suspicion for the murder quickly fell on Crowe. He initially denied the accusations, but admitted he had gotten into an argument with Kenneth because there was no toilet paper in the bathroom. Crowe claimed Kenneth had pulled a gun on him and that he simply reacted in self-defense. After rotting in jail while awaiting trial for first-degree murder, Crowe decided to do the right thing and confessed to the crime in a written note. He accepted a plea offer sentencing him to only 30 years in prison without possibility of parole. Number 4. Fatal family feud. In 2010, a fight erupted between family members in the small South African village of Makwea, who couldn't agree on what to watch that night on TV. 61-year-old David Makwea wanted to watch Germany play in the World Cup, while his 68-year-old wife Francina and their 2 children wanted to watch a gospel show. The trio allegedly took the remote control away from David, so he got up and changed the channel using the buttons on the TV itself. At one point, Francina and the kids ganged up on the father and began brutally beating him. They finally stopped and called for help when they realized how badly he was injured. By the time police arrived, David had passed. His nieces Miriam and Anna told the Daily Sun newspaper that their uncle was a kind man who was always happy. Police spokesman Mothamain Malefo told the press it was unclear what type of object the family used to beat David with, and that it seemed like they had bashed his head into a wall. Francina was taken into custody along with the couple's 36-year-old son, Colin, and their 23-year-old daughter, Lebagang, who was soon freed on a $200 bail. Colin and Francina remained in custody, though. The outcome of the case is unclear, but a judge and jury aren't needed to see how this family fight got way too out of hand. Number 3. Beaten for bumping into someone. In 2010, 23-year-old Kim Pham and her friends were taking a photo outside a nightclub in Santa Ana, California, when a woman named Amelia bumped into them, starting a vicious argument. Two of Amelia's friends, Candace Brito and Vanessa Zavala, soon jumped into the mix. The fight quickly became physical. Footage shows Miss Pham laying on the ground, while Brito and Zavala both kick her in the head. Pham was left with severe brain damage and died just 2 days later from her injuries. She died thanks to the blunt force trauma. Brito and Zavala were charged in connection to the tragedy, but argued in court that Pham threw the first punch, so they were acting in self-defense. They failed to sway the jury, though, and were convicted of voluntary manslaughter and assault. They received a 6-year sentence each. It came as disappointing news, not only to Pham's family, who urged the judge to give the maximum sentence of 11 years, but to Brito's attorney, Michael Malfetta, who maintained his client's innocence. Both women apologized for their actions in court. Brito said she understood that her victim's family would never forget what happened, but she hoped they could eventually forgive her. Zavala said that as the mother of a little boy, she couldn't imagine how much suffering Miss Pham's loved ones must have endured. But the defendants' apologetic pleas didn't bring their victim back, and their words were too little, too late. At the sentencing, the judge asked Brito and Zavala one simple question that served as a reminder of their terrible decisions. Why didn't you just walk away? Number 2. Deadly parking lot dispute. An off-duty Baltimore detective named Brian Stevenson was celebrating on the night before his 38th birthday in 2010 when he found himself in a deadly confrontation over a parking space. It all started when the 18-year-old police veteran and father of 4 pulled into a space a woman was trying to save for someone else while the rest of her party drank at a bar nearby. She told the group what happened and was soon joined by 25-year-old Sian James and a friend. A heated argument broke out and only ended when James picked up a chunk of concrete and threw it at Stevenson's head, fracturing his skull. Stevenson died from his injuries. James, who was out on bail for assaulting his ex-girlfriend at the time, was charged with murder. His lawyer argued that James acted in self-defense, and the young man and his friends thought Stevenson was drunk and planning to shoot them. A jury convicted James of involuntary manslaughter and gave him 10 years in prison. Stevenson's family members made it clear in their victim impact statements that they were not ready to forgive him. He also read a statement telling the family that the ordeal had affected him more than they knew and that he never intended to take someone's life. The judge offered some of his own thoughts, including a simple but hard-hitting statement. This didn't have to happen. Number 1. The duck sauce killer. In late 2021, a 51-year-old man from Queens named Glenn Hirsch ordered from a local Chinese restaurant and asked for extra duck sauce with his food. He got the sauce, but for some reason was still unsatisfied with his order and demanded a refund. The bizarre incident marked the beginning of a months-long campaign of stalking and harassment against the restaurant. Employees accused Hirsch of vandalizing a staff member's car, slashing another worker's vehicle, and threatening to kill their family. He also pointed a gun at an employee at least once. One evening in late April, he passed by the restaurant 7 times before approaching the delivery driver, Xuan Yan, and shooting him in the chest. Hirsch was charged with stalking, murder, and several other crimes, and faced a possible life sentence if he was convicted. He posted the $500,000 bail and was ordered to wear an ankle bracelet. When he failed to show up for court, law enforcement was sent to his house, where they found him dead. He had taken his own life. Hirsch's lawyer, Arthur A. Dalla, told the local news station NY1 that his client had adamantly maintained his innocence and that they were prepared to fight the case. He left behind a long note explaining that he was worried about getting sent back to jail for some other pending charges and that he didn't want to waste away behind bars for years while fighting the case. Hirsch also took responsibility for some weapons that were found in his estranged wife's apartment. Photos of the troubled man's hoarded home indicate that his issues ran deeper than anyone realized. The home was packed to the brim with junk, and images of the inside of the fridge revealed that Hirsch had a knack for hoarding duck sauce and other condiments. It's unfortunate that his demons took over to the point where 2 lives were lost. Thanks for watching. Have you ever gotten into a fight over something silly? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe. See you next time. Bye.